Yeah, I think it's a complicated answer. But we're ready for the game against India. Losing Lungi in the second match, so injuries was one part of it. The second part of it was the first week we didn't play our best cricket, and probably a roll-on effect from that first week, playing two really strong teams in India and England, and losing to probably a team that we should beat, Bangladesh, really knocked the wind out of our sails. So that was a really tough start. And then we tried to come back into the tournament, try to fight, try to make sure we can get some performances going. But right throughout the tournament, there was a lack of consistency in our performances. We had small contributions from different guys in the tournament, but only really up until the last two games did we have huge impacts on players making performances. There wasn't a fifer from a bowler. Only 100 scored in the whole series. So those are the things. If you look at the last two games almost as a blueprint, when you do those things, we win as well. We win games of cricket no matter how strong the opposition are. So as you rightly said, it was a very disappointing turnout for ourselves, especially being out of the competition earlier in the tournament that we wanted to. It would be nice to have ourselves a fighting chance right till the end. But also this tournament now is not the tournament it used to be. In the tournament you could play okay cricket, and I thought we did that in the previous World Cup. We played okay. We also lost to India, we also lost to Pakistan, we also lost to Australia, but you had two more opportunities in terms of the quarterfinal. Now if you're not on top of your game, which we weren't, we shouldn't be making the semi-finals. So extremely disappointed sitting here. But at least the last two games we proved to our fans the type of cricket that we can play, and I'm very proud as a captain to say that, because it is very easy for a team when they've been on the ropes for so long in a tough tournament just to fall away and disappear, and we didn't do that. We stood up and we played some really good games of cricket. So that puts a small smile on my face.
Just on the tournament itself, in the format, there were a lot of cries when the ICC did say that it would be a 10-team tournament, about the other teams not being able to participate in the ICC World Cup. Do you feel this format is the right one and the one that makes for competitive cricket?
It's a tougher competition, definitely. So probably the answer to that would be yes. If our previous World Cup we beat Ireland, Zimbabwe and West Indies in our 3-round Robin game. So it's easier to get, from a South African point of view, I would probably say leave it to the 8 teams, because it gives you another crack at getting to that quarter-final stage. But this is a ruthless tournament. So I think in terms of watching it, it's probably a better structure.
Morning, Bob.
Morning.
Welcome back to the whole team.
Thank you.
You speak of the first week and how difficult it was at the World Cup and the two teams that you faced who were favourites. And obviously in how you voiced out how difficult it was for you as a captain. How difficult was it to reach out to some of the experienced players in the side who were also struggling to sort of get runs and obviously with the mixture that you want of youth and experience, how difficult was it to tackle?
No, that's a great question, because that is a reality that we did face as a team. Obviously being the captain of the team, I take most of the responsibility on my own shoulders, so that was weighing on me. But also some of the other senior players were probably low on runs and not doing as well as they would have liked. And naturally what happens to anyone when they a little bit low in confidence is it is harder to be at the forefront and making sure you're leading as well as you would like. So that was something we spoke about as a team on that side, to make sure that even the more senior and experienced players, to make sure that they contribute off the field, keep making sure that there's a support system for me in place as well to share the load. And that's what we're there for as a team. We're trying to share the load. but it was something that we faced as a team, and we spoke about it, and the guys did try.
You've got quite an appetite when you come up against Australia. That time, with the celebration, I'm sure it must have meant a lot to you and the World Cup to wrap it up. Like
I mean, as I said, leaving the shores there yesterday, that the emotion of that was just purely on me. Having to lead from the front as captain, I have to score hundreds as well if I'm talking about scoring hundreds. And I batted really well throughout the competition, but it was a frustration for me that I couldn't put more big scores on the board. Obviously, I know that it's not possible that I'm going to win every game, but it shows that if one batter bats through, we are putting ourselves in a position of winning. In the last two games, for myself, it was nice to be there and see the team through to get a win for the team. But that was just when we spoke so much about batters putting the hand up. So that was just me, the emotion of been trying to do it the whole competition and then finally getting it.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Obviously, the batting has come under a lot of pressure over the past year, 18 months or so. As the captain, or as a big part of the batting or top order,
when we left, we as the Brains Trust understood that we didn't have the strongest batting lineup in the world of cricket. When it comes to names on paper, we thought we had the best bowling attack, and that was the one thing that we spoke of, that we knew. We knew our limitations and we knew our strengths as a team. And obviously, the last year, consistently been there. So that's why I'm saying our hopes wasn't on us putting on 350 every game as a batting unit. Our hopes was on bowling teams out for 280 and then chasing it down. And that happened at the World Cup. As you say, there was a lot of talk about the batting, but losing Dale and probably Lungi not being at his best from a fitness point of view meant that in that first 6 or so games we chased 300 plus, or the team got 300 plus almost in every game. And the thing that is obvious to me, that in a chase in the World Cup, all the teams that got 320, 330 plus, it was difficult to chase. When you got a lower score, then it was a little bit easier. It's still runs on the board in a big game does make a difference. So we understood that. Obviously, in a perfect world, you want more of your batters contributing. Over the last 12 months or so, Quinton has done really well, Rassi has done very well, and then obviously I've also scored some runs. But as a collective top 6, we need to be performing better if you want to win games with the bat as well. We knew that our bowling was going to do that, but as soon as we lost those injuries, our team was a team of trying to put a team of balance together, and that showed that we did a good job. Even someone like Chris Morris, who wasn't part of the initial plans, purely from our tactics point of view, we had so many X-factor bowlers, we didn't need another one. The fact that we lost our bowlers meant that Murray came in and he did brilliantly. So unfortunately that was at the expense of Dwayne Proteas, who's been really good for us over the last year, but that's the challenges we faced from a selection point of view.
On the way forward, a lot has been said, of course, about potential changes, not only to the management team, but to some players who might leave internationally.
Yeah.
Yourself, have you considered your future? You've always said that once the day you lose that passion and the drive to play for your country, you might go on retirement.
Yeah. So naturally, what will happen, obviously, with the first part of the question is the fact that 2 or 3 guys are retiring, and then so I always find that after a World Cup like this, there's probably about 4 or 5 changes anyway, because most of your guys are a little bit older. So I think you will see that in the one-day team, probably 4 or 5 new faces the next time, or a new team the next time the one-day side play. because there needs to be some sort of looking forward to the next 4 years and the planning of that. But also within that, you need to have some players around them, because otherwise that learning period takes so much longer, and that phase of in between can become really tricky. So that's obviously, from a Proteas point of view, it's important that we do have experienced players around to help the younger guys. And then personally, as I said in the press conference on that side, it was just a case for me where I said that, winning the World Cup or losing the World Cup, after the World Cup, I would sit down and just rethink where am I going, what am I doing, what is my purpose, what is my plans, how long am I seeing myself playing for South Africa, how long do I need to look at maybe perhaps playing T20 leagues around the world. Those are all things that I need to consider over the next while, and we'll have good discussions with all the right people about that. But right now I'm still sitting here with a lot of passion for the Proteas. I'm extremely motivated still. I love captaining this team. That has been my purpose for the last year, more than anything, more than my batting, more than tournaments away from the Proteas. That has been the motivating factor for me. So obviously I'm hurt as well. Like I said, I carry the responsibility on my shoulders as well. So that's why no, it's not necessary now to make decisions, because you're probably a little bit emotional, but time will heal everything, and then in 2 or 3 weeks time I'll be fresher again, obviously having moved on from the disappointment of the World Cup, but then just seeing where it all fits in going forward.
Welkom terug. Aan kort vraag ook van de Afrikaans. De opzomming, ja, wat ik het nu doen, is achter. Dit de opzomming, kan je ons zeggen, hoe verwacht je van Zuid-Afrikaners, de aanhangers, het is toevallig nog heel wat aanhangers, niet heel daar veel. Hoe verwacht je de Zuid-Afrikaners moet jullie vertoning interpreteren? Wil je mensen met zachtens willen wees, of voor mensen ook bij openlijk en ernstig met jullie wees? En wat is platform te nou? Voor de volgende 5 jaar denk ik, Zuid-Afrika kan weer aanspraak maken op die titel.
Sure.
Het is wel translate. Alles van die beste.
Ja, nou, dat is groter Afrikaans wat ek ken. Oké, laat ek begin. Wat is die eerste deel? Die fans. Die fans het elke reg om te voel wat hulle voel. Ons as 'n span voel presies dieselfde emosies. Ons gaan deur dieselfde goed. Disappointment, hurt, embarrassment, al die goeders, ek weet nie wat in Afrikaans is nie. So dit is normaal om so te voel, ons voel presies dieselfde. So ek, as 'n span en as kaptein kan ek net jammer sê dat ons nie die standaarde van die span gekry het nie, wat ons uitgesit het om te try regkry in die Wêreldbeker. Maar wat ek ook sal sê is, vir my is dit belangrik dat enige Suid-Afrikaanse span moet altyd net hulle alles gee. Dis al wat ek kan vra as kaptein. Dis al wat jy regtig soek in jou span. Obviously is ons 'n land wat wil wen. Ons gaan altyd 'n land wees wat wil wen. Ons gaan nooit tevrede wees met tweede beste, derde beste nie. Ons het baie hoë standaarde as 'n land, en ons span het presies dieselfde standaarde. So wees kwaad, wees emosioneel, wees bly dat ons Australië gewen het die laaste game. Dit was 'n groot wedstryd. Ons min dinge lekkerder vir ons as 'n nasie om Australië te wen, maak nie saak of dit klaar uit is nie. En dan dan beweeg aan met tyd en support die span weer. Soos ek sê, die span ons het alles gegee. Die ouens is emosioneel en fisies is hulle tanks leeg, want ons het was 'n toue toer waar die ouens alles gegee het. En dit is al wat ek kan sê, ons probeer het. Die resultate was nie daar nie, maar dit was nie van 'n lack of trying nie. Tweede deel? Ja, kyk, ons baie dinge wat moet gebeur vir jou, maar om 'n span te wees wat jouself in daai posisie sit om die beste, om potentieel 'n Wêreldbeker te wen. Volgende Wêreldbeker is in India. Wat is nodig om in India te wen? Jy het 'n golf span nodig wat baie goed is teen spin. So natuurlik gaan jou Pakistan, Sri Lanka, India, Bangladesh, al die spanne gaan goeie spanne wees op daai toernooie. So die volgende 4 jaar in terms van preparation vir Kolbers, vir spin veral gaan 'n groot deel speel. En dan as 'n bowler attack, ek dink dieselfde ding wat in Engeland nou gebeur het, mense het altyd spoed nodig. Spoed is baie belangrik. Solank ons vinnige bowlers het wat 145, 150 gaan bowl, gee jouself 'n kans. Hoekom ons praat baie van Dale en van KG en die ouens wat obviously nie baseball sou wou wees nie, maar iemand soos André Norkeer was ons backup plan geweest vir spoed, en die bal amper 150 km/h, en hy doen presies wat iemand soos Jeffrey Archer vir Engeland doen. Sulke ouens is ook belangrik, want hulle het nog nie baie gespeel nie, maar hulle het iets wat die ouens nog nie gesien het nie. Ja, ek dink dit sal 'n bietjie anders wees in terme van planning, maar er is definitief genoeg talent in ons land. Jy kan dit sien, die Mzansi League is 'n great ding vir die toekoms van cricket in Suid-Afrika. Dit is baie belangrik dat ander jong spelers deurkom. Ek dink my sien dit reg rondom die wêreld, die effek wat dit het. India, die IPL, Big Bash, Australië, die ouens kom deur, selfs Bangladesh se T20 league het hulle nou 'n span gemaak wat 'n baie goeie span is. So dis 'n baie belangrike investment vir cricket Suid-Afrika.
It's the last three, please. Tango Stewart and Asante.
Fawaz, just a quick one, mate. How important was the toss? Never mind the weather. We saw the first couple of games, and I think that's where we started to see that it's quite important to be, to select whether to bowl or bat first, and looking at the conditions. But it seems like we obviously were leaning on our bowling attack. Did we go there knowing very well that our batting attack will not probably be able to stand up to some of the bowlers across the world?
I think the toss has played a effect, but I think sometimes your decision you make at a toss is very dependent on the selection of the team that you have, and we didn't always have the luxury of having one thing that's very strong, batting or bowling, and then your decision gets determined by what is your strengths on the day, and then you've got to try and make do with what you've got. But even I remember specifically the toss against Bangladesh. Would I change it now? Probably yes, I would, because I did feel like batting was also, it was a lot of discussions going on. Batting was a great option, but it showed that when we played Sri Lanka and who was the other team we defended, we chased the score. Anyway, Afghanistan, yeah, two subcontinent teams. When you do bowl first against them, and you do get them 280, 260, 250, then it's actually very easy to chase down the score. But when they get a big score on the target, that on the board, then you're a little bit under trouble, because then they've got their spinners through the middle. So our plans was always strong bowling attack, extra pace in Morris, pace and bounce in the over wicket, try and bowl them out for 250, morning start. All the local people are saying, in Surrey, the morning toss, 10:30 game, you have to bowl first. So we perhaps should have listened more to what, the gut that we felt possibly, and then to the local people there. But even with the toss there, we bowled very averagely. So I could have won 15 tosses in a row and choose everything that I wanted to do, but it always comes down to the skill that you produce on whatever you do first. So yes, that in my mind, that was always at the back of my mind, at the toss, what is our strengths today, and then you try and work with that a little bit. The last two games we probably had a longer batting lineup, so then you can say, well, actually our batting lineup is a little bit longer, so we can chase now. Whereas before our bowling was our strength, so you want to defend with the ball a little bit more. So, but it's a 50-50 thing. It's not that big of a deal.
Faf, I just want to take you back to something before the tournament started. They placed a lot of emphasis on it, that was the mindset of the team. I know hindsight is an exact science, so we wanted everybody to be quite relaxed. You spoke about not the be-all and end-all.
Yeah.
Especially when you looked at the Bangladesh game, for instance, it looked like the team's mentality had gone too far, the one win, it was too relaxed. Looking at it now, over the course of time, do you think that perhaps you got that a little bit wrong, and that you would have pushed for more intensity from the beginning?
I think, it's a fair question. I think the context of the mindset is where the difference comes. The context of the mindset was meant to be for when there's a lot of pressure on us as a team, to not feel overwhelmed by the situation that is in front of you. Do not look at it as if you lose this game right now, you're going to die, the world's going to finish. Like, don't put that extra pressure on yourself. So that's the context of that mindset going into a World Cup where there's more pressure. By no means ever, absolutely never, do we as a team, and especially me as a captain, go into the field with a chilled, relaxed, it's just cruise through emotions here today, brew, it doesn't work like that. That's not the way that I captain. My biggest things are always body language, intensity. That's an absolute non-negotiable. But looking back at that game, looking back at that first week, yes, there was times when the team was a little bit casual, and that was the chat that we had after the Bangladesh game. That why is it in that game? Why is our body language not as good as we need it to be? Is it a comfort zone thing because you're playing against a team that is less favourite in the world of cricket? So possibly that game we weren't at our best in that regard, but I can tell you it's got nothing to do with the mindset of being calm and composed and relaxed in your mind. There's always, from a body language point of view, that's never acceptable.
But is it possible, that the team may have gotten that a bit wrong, or you were clear on it,
yeah.
The other players may not have been clear on it?
Yeah, I suppose, yes. But I think that's as a player yourself, you've got to look at yourself in the mirror. When you walk out playing a game for the Proteas, you should never walk onto the field with that mindset anyway. So if you're doing that, then the finger is pointing right back at you as a player. So there was guys that would have had that hard look in the mirror with themselves because they weren't where they needed to be, and they try to rectify it the next game against India, which I thought in the India match there was a huge amount of intensity and fight. When we bowled second, we just didn't have enough runs. We were 20-30 runs short on that day.
With regards to changes that are going to happen going forward because of the FUC Madina's side, will you guys really consider giving or looking deeper into the issue of Temba and Dean into this area side, because these two guys have repeatedly said that they want to give this format a shot?
Everyone comes into contention now. I mean, as I said, there's 3 or 4 players that's probably moving on. Right now at the top of my head, someone like Reece Hendricks is another player that's done well, has opened the batting. He's a younger player, someone like that. Aidan Markram hasn't been playing all the time. He hasn't been an established player, so there's already 2 names. And then you look at all the other players in the country, who's going to fill JP's position. Who's the best guys, who's the best options for that. So I mean, that is now, it's open season for whoever is putting their hand up in terms of performance. If they do that, obviously Temba has done signs of it. Temba has improved a lot, I think, as a white ball cricketer. I think initially his style of play was more suited to Test cricket, but he's shown last year in the T20 tournament when he performed, he scored 100 in that. So he's putting his hand up and he's saying, pick me. So there would be probably 3 or 4 names that is now probably going to come into the one-day team. But to be honest with you, we haven't had those chats yet, because there's a lot that needs to happen probably before we get to who's the next one-day team. So yeah, they will be obviously players that will be on the table for team selection.
Thank you very much. You just got to head off, otherwise.
Thank you. Which way are you coming, bud? Jump over.
Come this way?
Not. Oh.
Which way are you going?
This way.
At least good to see a SA captain coming back with the team.
I was thinking of
Not yet warm.
Should have left you in the UK, then you would have to hear that.
in terms of that regard? Because you see teams like England had a specific bowler for those middle over periods in Plunkett, so which showed that they spent a lot of time in, looking for those sort of skills with the white ball cricket, 50 over much. And how far do you think South Africa is this side that you went to the World Cup with, after the World Cup now is concluded?
It's a good question. I think initially when we picked the team, and over the last 18 months, the team that we put together, I think from a bowling point of view, I think we would have been as good as anybody. And as Faf mentioned, when you've lost, over the last 18 months, what we've done was to put together world-class bowling attack. The batters haven't produced the numbers that you would have wanted, but we won a lot of series with that same team because of our world-class bowling attack. Once you've lost that world-class bowling attack, then it becomes different. There's a lot more pressure on batsmen to perform, but initially with the team that we had, we were very optimistic that we would do very well in the tournament, certainly better than we have done.
Coach, good morning.
Morning.
In your career of coaching, have you ever gone to the World Cup with injured players? Have you ever taken a squad or a team to the World Cup with an injured player or two, or one that has a niggle, that has not been playing, that has not been getting game time? And can you finally officially say that you, together with the selection panel, you were the one who also said that I would like to have this player on board, I would like to have that player, but were there any players that obviously, due to the fact that the selection panel is the panel, that you couldn't have, that you wanted to have?
I don't think so. I don't think there are any players that were left in South Africa that we felt should have been there. Otherwise, they would have been picked in the first place, I guess. The thing about taking injured players, when we went to the World Cup with the West Indies, Chris Gayle has always got some sort of a niggle, but he's a world-class player, and you take him. If you're talking specifically about Dale Steyn over the last 18 months has been a world-class player for us and a key part of our bowling attack. And when I met with his medical team in Cape Town during the camp, they said he needed 8 to 10 more days to be ready to play. And therefore I felt it was the right thing to do, to afford him that 8 to 10 days to see if he can get going. Because if he gets going and then I put together that world-class bowling attack that we've had, then things could be very different, even in as far as Hashim sort of out of form for a large part of the summer. He had his family issues at the back end, decided to take time out of T20 cricket to go and do some work with Dale Benkenstein. In the first 2 warm-up games, Hashim looked like his old self again. He got 2 half centuries and was looking really good. Unfortunately, the first game he got a hit in the face. And sort of the magnitude of something like that will have an effect on any player. Back in the day, something like that happens and it sends a ripple effect through the whole dressing room, So, but I felt like certainly from a batting point of view, we had batsmen that if they clicked could put runs on the board. But ultimately, once we didn't have that world-class bowling attack anymore, then it became obviously a very difficult situation.
Coach, maybe just to go to the mentality thing that Stuart and Faf were talking about just before Faf left. Bafana coach, Stuart Baxter, has spoken so many times about how South African players mentally struggle with finishing off a game, and with our bowlers sometimes we struggle. The bowlers have struggled to finish off the tail of most teams that we've played against. In the 2 years that you've been here working with the pool of players that you've worked with, how would you say maybe you assess the mental strength of South African players across board?
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that in the cricket sense, simply because when we went to Australia for the series we played in Australia, the series ended up at 1-1. And that last game we said, okay, this is our World Cup final. Let's fast forward to the World Cup. Australia versus South Africa in the World Cup final. Let's see how we perform. And our mentality was fantastic. And we played a fantastic game of cricket. We got 200s from David Miller, and got hundreds. Lungi bowled extremely well. He was a lot fitter than he was. He bowled extremely well. KG bowled well. I think Dale Steyn also played well in that game. So the mentality wasn't questioned then. Was never in question then. Also, when we played against Pakistan here in South Africa, it came down to it was 2-2 in the series, I believe, and it came down to a decider. We played those deciders. We always said, let's play these deciders like we would play a World Cup game. And in that decider, it was the same thing. The fact is that the bowling attack perhaps led the way, but in the game in Australia, we got 300 and something, in the deciding game. So the mentality at that time, I had no concern over the mentality at all at that time. In the World Cup, the build-up that we'd had, not able to get as much perhaps game time as we wanted in England. The second game got rained off. The second practice game got rained off. I get and I understand where people are coming from with the Bangladesh game. That perhaps our mentality or body language or whatever wasn't as good as it should be. But I also think perhaps Bangladesh's body language is probably higher than it's ever been. If you look at how they performed in the tournament, they performed well above themselves in the tournament. So mentality-wise, I felt like we fronted up. Obviously, the first week was tough. Three games in the first week. We were the only team that played 3 games in the first week. Once we lost the first 2 games, and then we lost players. The first game we lost Hash as a batsman. The second game we lost Lungi as a bowler, and then so you're under pressure. That keeps putting pressure on the squad all the time. And unfortunately, we didn't recover in time. By the last week of the tournament, we were playing the cricket that we wanted to be playing. Either in the first week or certainly by the middle part of the tournament, but we didn't recover from those setbacks, those early setbacks in time.
Coach, similar question that I asked about your future. You still delivered your future with Cricket South Africa. You had a fantastic record leading up to the tournament, but things didn't go according to plan. And of course, your mandate was to win the tournament. Do you feel that you've done enough to save the job?
I suppose that will come out in the wash in the next couple of weeks, I guess. But I said this in the media in England. If you look at the World Cup in isolation, then you think perhaps I haven't done enough. If you look at what we've achieved over the last 18 months, then it's a different picture. It is. I guess it will come down to interpretation from Corey and the hierarchy.
Coach, Corey, was om die Afrikaanse debat te kry word dit. Van die teams se kant af natuurlik.
First of all, wait a minute.
Yes,
who are you speaking to?
Corey.
It's the questions are open for Otis first.
Sorry, I apologize. Coach, can I ask you a question then, Coach?
Not in Afrikaans.
Do you think every question we ask here, possibly now in this press conference, is a question in hindsight? I was fortunate to be at the press conference when you guys left here, and you guys spoke about, and I'm being very sincere in my question, you spoke about the fact that you guys went up Pebble Mountain to go and do a bit of thinking. In hindsight now, do you think you guys, whatever you guys did in the build-up, during the tournament, do you guys think you guys did everything perfectly right? And is there things that you guys could have changed? And if you do get a mandate to go forward, what would you want to do differently, Wilson?
I think with regards to the tournament itself, the lead up to the tournament, obviously the lead up to the tournament was tough. It wasn't exactly as we would have liked it. When I started off with Linda Zondi as the chairman of selectors, we sat down and we spoke about what we need. We needed to have a look at players, so we opened up and we said from the beginning we were going to open the pool of players, have a look at a pool of players, and then hopefully by the last 6 months, certainly the last 10 games against Pakistan and Sri Lanka, we wanted to play the team that is quite likely to go to the World Cup. With injuries and different things, we weren't able to put that team on the park. Even in the last series against Sri Lanka, we were still looking at at other players, which I guess would have been an issue. Even in the camp, with players coming back so late from the IPL, we weren't able to really ramp up the intensity in the camp to get it up to where we want it to be, so that when we get to England we hit the ground running. So perhaps that's something that we can look at going forward. But all in all, when we left, we still felt like whether we were going to win the World Cup or not, we still felt like we were going to do better than we did. And ultimately we haven't done anywhere near as well as we expected.
Coach, just on your future, a little bit more. There's been links to the Indian job. Can you confirm to that?
I've never had any conversations around that, so I guess at a time like this, there are links with every job. So if you get a link with a job, it probably means that you're actually not that bad after all. So there you go.
Coach, just in terms of the continuity of the team itself, obviously losing JP and Imran through retirement, is there any players within the current pool that we took to the World Cup that you think could step up into a bit more of a leadership role? Obviously with Ash and Faf maybe not going to be playing as often as they would have in the past. Are there any players that you see at the moment who can step up into their role?
When you look at it, there's Quinton, there's Aaron Markram, David is only 29 or 30, I think. There are a lot of players, KG Rabada, Lungi Ngidi, Andile Peflakoya, all these guys was their first, but I would think that those guys are the guys that will, having had the experience, are the guys that will take the team forward. The experience hasn't been great for them, but I'm sure that there's stuff that they've learned through the experience that they can put into practice. I think Aaron Markram is going to be a fantastic player for South Africa. At the moment he's not putting the runs on the board that we all expect, but when you see him back, the 30s that he makes are world-class 30s, and I've had a conversation with him and I said, you don't want to be a world-class 30 batsman, you don't want to be remembered as a world-class 30 batsman, but I know that he will turn the corner and he will make a lot of runs for South Africa going forward. He's captained the World Cup winning team in South Africa. Let's not forget that either. So I think he's somebody that will have a significant role to play in cricket in South Africa going forward.
Last question, so Stuart, Masatsi, and then
Coach, this is 2 in 1. The greatest myth in cricket, world cricket, is why South Africa hasn't still won the World Cup.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you probably had those questions before you even came to this job. Could you, now that you've completed a World Cup with the side, perhaps point it to the direction of it being a mental thing when it comes to an ICC event? And also, did you at any stage throughout the World Cup in those changing rooms look at some of your bowlers and notice a bit of fatigue with all the cricket that they've been playing, in specific players like KG Rabada?
Well, fatigue for sure. I think KG, he came back early from the IPL because of an injury scare, and then after that, like I said, in camp we weren't able to ramp up his intensity because he was trying to nurse him back to fitness, knowing that we had probably 8 days in England before that first game. So there was a fatigue element in there for sure. But around the mentality, like I said, when we played other series, we played with a very strong mentality, and we played with a winning attitude, and that's the attitude that I, from the beginning, I said, if we're going to win the World Cup, we have to be fearless. I don't know what it is, because of whether it is the way that we started the tournament, the way that we got into the tournament. We didn't get into the tournament the way that we expected to, trying to win. Even if we lost against England and we won against Bangladesh, then it would have been a different scenario. We didn't win that game against Bangladesh that we were probably expected to win. And then confidence take a hit, and then as soon as your confidence take a hit, the strong characters will stand up, and the characters that feels the pressure a little bit might sort of just go into themselves a little bit, and we try throughout the time in practice to keep making sure that we maintain that fearlessness in our the way we approach practice is still the same way that we approach practice when we were playing in the other series. You know, but like I said, the tough start in the first week just set us back, hit our confidence a bit, and it took us too long to recover that confidence. And in the last week, we played with a lot more freedom. You know, people would say, well, there was no pressure, but you know, to that I say the last game of the tournament, you're playing against Australia, who's already qualified. I've been around teams in the past where when we get to that stage, people throw the towel in, one foot's on the plane already, and the performances go completely the other way, you know. But at least we still stood up and put in a fantastic performance against the team that could potentially go on to win the World Cup. So, you know, we could have beaten the world champions before they become world champions.
And the enthusiasm was
fantastic. You know, the team environment will always remain strong throughout the whole World Cup. Even though we weren't playing great cricket, we still had the team environment was still very good. You know, there's no sort of backstabbing or anything. There's no people sulking away in their rooms. We still enjoyed each other's company and stuff like that. Went out for meals together and all that sort of stuff. But ultimately, we didn't play well enough.
Krista?
Just on the story that you know, that you were given an ultimatum beforehand, and you said that you either make the final or you lose your job as coach. Can you confirm, was that the case or not?
I can't remember what I was told. You win the final or you lose your job. You know, I think in January I had a conversation around staying on with Cricket South Africa. So we'll see whether that conversation still holds true after the World Cup.
Thank you very much. The floor is now. Do you still have questions?
Yes, just the floor.
No, much that is your question. That's the last one, so it is.
Yeah, to Coach, if the powers that be says continue, do you want to continue? And to Corey, in hindsight again, I mean, do you guys regret that maybe you should have called the players in from the IPL?
Yeah.
Because it's one of the reasons which you can put as, you know, why we didn't do as well as we should have done.
I think the first
What's
question.
the first question?
My question is that if CSA says continue, do you want to continue?
Yeah, I feel so. The T20 World Cup is around the corner. I feel like I still have unfinished business. You know, so but we'll see how the conversations unfold in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you very much. We're now taking questions for the rest of the panel. For you, first one's for you.
Can I just follow up with Corey's answer? Okay, after you answer this question. But the question would be, do you think there should be a revised plan with regards to IPL and Proteas, especially heading to big tournaments? Because it was very ironical looking at Virat Kohli saying he feels for Dale Steyn when he's the one who bowled him to the ground.
Yeah, I think you know, when it comes to the IPL, I think there's a lot that we need to think about going forward. And you know, in planning a World Cup event, we need to take all of those things into consideration. So again, it might be hindsight again, but we'll have to look at the way, if we want to bring the World Cup home, we need to look at every aspect, and IPL will be one of those, especially if the IPL is on the other side, or the World Cup is on the other side of the world, you know, IPL. If it's beforehand, it's a different story.
And then, sorry, Corey, in general, because it's starting to look like a money thing, including going to the World Cup, for senior players especially, they want to go all over the world. Should there be a plan that's maybe revised as for Cricket South Africa with regards to the growing number of international T20 tournaments around the world?
So we have a plan with the players. We have, over the last 2 years, with the help of Doc and Otis, we've brought in a thing called a personal development plan, or PDP discussions. In those discussions, we actually sit down with the players, we map out the various leagues around the world. We look at our FTP, and we look at how it all fits in, you know, based on workload and so forth, because we also understand that that's an opportunity for them to earn extra money, to retain our players that way, so that they don't feel that they need to go and sign Colpack or anything else. So we are having these proactive talks, so yes, those discussions are happening.
You've been a coach in the World Cup. Is 18 months enough time to prepare a side for the Cricket World Cup?
I mean, if you're asking me, when I was a coach, I also didn't have 18 months, so it probably is not. But I think what needs to happen now is for us to plan the next 4 years, and see how those 4 years must happen, and every aspect that's going to be important for us to take into consideration.
Well, from a Cricket South Africa admin perspective, what better support could you have provided to Dr. Spaf to enable them, given that 18 months isn't enough time, to enable them to have been better prepared for the World Cup?
I think we've prepared, we've enabled them and given them all the support, everything that Doc has wanted, they've gotten. So I wouldn't say that there was anything lacking from a support perspective.
Christo?
Sorry, I maybe just want to slip a last one in for Otis.
Christo.
Just on the quality of franchise cricket in South Africa, you feel, is that good enough for the standard that should be needed to win a World Cup?
Christo, every country will have the same discussion around, is the standard of our domestic structure strong enough to, is it breeding international players? You look at some players that have stepped up from franchise level to international level. You look at what Rafi's done. You look at people like that have stepped up from franchise level. And I've said it before somewhere, I can't sit here and criticize franchise coaches or the franchise system. Cricket South Africa will have to look at going forward. There's a lot spoken about our mentality at the Protea level, but what is being done beneath Protea level from a mental side to get, to get players' mentalities where they need to be for international level. When you come to the Protea level and then you get introduce dietitians and sports scientists and sports psychologists and all this sort of stuff. If you've never been exposed to that before, how do you react to it? It's a new thing. So I wouldn't say that franchise cricket. No, in the West Indies, the cricket that was played in the West Indies didn't necessarily develop international players either. Is franchise cricket developing international players? I would use Rassi as an example. So I would say yes, it can. Depends on the player and the system that he's operating in.
From a selection point of view, this question for Linda. Looking at the players that came into the World Cup carrying a few medals, did this put you under immense pressure? Were there conversations around possible backup players who saw good in the news into the World Cup? And also, with the benefit of hindsight, giving out Chris Morris in the initial squad, was that a regrettable decision?
No, not at all. It wasn't a regrettable decision. I remember after Australia, I spoke to Chris and I said to him, it was so nice to see him perform the manner that he did. He really stepped up. For us, as probably what Fortis and Faf has spoke about, was the issue that we had a plan in terms of we went fast bowlers who can bowl 140, and then sort of focus on
Six.
Is that your name?
Yes.
I think when you ask about the plan in terms of bowlers at a certain point of view, I think when you look at our build up to Pakistan, we had Kafi's all bowled full first change. We had Dale Steyn opening up with Lungi. So we had that plan, but as soon as the injuries and then the whole plan turned. I mean, for us to Nokia, it was a big blow. When you look at all the teams currently who are playing and are doing well, it's the bowlers who are definitely taking their team forward. You put aside the
batting side, I think from the bowling point of view, the issue of injuries, when you look at the players that you have, and you look at the potential backup players, even our backup players were injured. I mean, Buren Hendricks also had a against Australia. How are we going to play? Otis had a brilliant experience in terms of the conditions in England. So we knew exactly, before we announced the team, we knew exactly if we play against India, if we play against Australia, play spinners. As you are aware that before South Africa, we had this idea of being sort of like scared to play two spinners. We had a plan, we had two wrist spinners, best spinners we have, Tahir and Shamsi. We had a plan, who do we pick until against which country. So, but everything, if it changes, then you must also adapt. I think we are in this pressure purely because our betting put us slightly under pressure, because you come in there, you look at, okay, fine, what do we do? We can chase 220. Our batters weren't quite there, even though we became sort of like a bowling team. So in Hassan, if our injuries prior to the World Cup were there and our backup players were also doing well. I mean, another player which we had Dala, which is a guy that we looked at as one of our backup players, but he also had a needle. So then why do you go? You can't go to the B team, to the provincial B team. You just look at the players that you had, look at the players that you developed for the past 18 months and just go with that opportunities.
Corrie, net vinnig in Afrikaans vandag. Kan ek jou vra, Corrie, ek hoor in Engels jy sê het al wat julle as bestuur het, al wat hulpbronne vir die afrigter, die kaptein, vir julle span gegee om hulle taak vir hulle maklik te maak. Wat is die pad vorentoe vir Cricket Suid-Afrika? Julle president was aangehaal eerder wat hy gesê het, daar moet veranderinge wees. Wat is die plan vir die volgende 4 jaar vir Cricket Suid-Afrika, veral van julle bestuur se kant? Gaan daar enige veranderinge onder die bestuur van Cricket Suid-Afrika wees? As deel van die antwoord.
Ek gaan daai antwoord nou vir jou baie maklik moet oplos en sê dat die 20ste Julie is die spesiale raadsvergadering en dit gaan daar tydens bespreek word. So ek het geen antwoord vir jou verder as dit.
Corey, just on a little bit of a side note, provincial cricket, it's been quite a major talking point. CSA and SACA reportedly at loggerheads. Has there any update on that, on where the provincial structure or the franchise structure lies now, especially in consultation with SACA?
The domestic restructure is a members' council decision. It was a decision taken by members' council, and we will continue to discuss the details of the restructure with SACA, which is a very important stakeholder who represents the players. So we will engage them all the time. So we are planning and to do that over the next couple of months.
Good, the last few for the panel. Puliso, Stuart, Simpson, and that's it, the last one.
Corey, I'm not sure if you are the right person to answer this one, or if anyone else on the panel wants to have this one. Otis, Mr. Zondi as well as Faf, they've all spoken about how we, in this tournament, we were a bowling side, so to say, maybe even in the past year or so, and we can credit that to Otis Gibson's obviously background, right, as a bowling coach and stuff like that. Are we now at a stage where maybe we are looking at getting a strongish character for a batting coach, or what's the feeling with that one? Because if we are where we are now, if Otis does continue, obviously the bowling will get stronger and stronger, and we don't want to be in a situation where the country feels like the batting has been neglected or is not being given the kind of attention that the bowling is being given at this point in time. Thank you.
Well, I think that is maybe a question for the coach to answer. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a coaching position. You know, whether he's a bowling coach, the head coach who has bowling, he's still going to have to decide on who's going to be his batting coach. So
I can answer that. I think, you know, with regards to that, the coach sets up the sort of the environment for the player to flourish in and so on and that. And I think over the time that we've had, I think Dale Benkenstein has done a fantastic job. You know, ultimately the coach doesn't go out and play for the player, and it would be like I feel it would be wrong to label one person with a responsibility. You know, the batting is failing, so obviously it must be the coach. When the batting is done well, then it isn't the coach, it's the player. So you know, as head coach, I take responsibility for everything. I guess it all falls on my shoulder. You know, but I think over the course of the time that he's been here, he's done a fantastic job, Dale Stein. Sorry, Dale Benkenstein. sorry, Dale Benkenstein.
Thanks, Otis. Doc, just a quick one, man. With all the experience that you have, how difficult has it been, you know, working with players with so much and so many niggles leading up to a big tournament, you know, like the World Cup? And do you share the same sentiments with regards to, you know, a revised plan, most probably to control these workload for these players? Because I'm 100% sure you do tell them that you are bowling too much, you need to, you know, tone down. But whether that happens or it doesn't happen, you know, some players need to earn and so forth. So do you share the same sentiment there? And then, Mr. Zondi, just a quick one, do you think there will be any conversations around the selection panel altogether with regards to whether some new faces will come in or what's the situation? Because surely you are continuing and you guys have done a good job to bring up a few players that are youngsters and of which we think we would have loved to see more in this change that's coming.
Thank you, Six. Thank you very much, the reality is that you never want to sort of afford any excuses when there's poor performances, but at the same time, we need to look at reality. And I feel for the selection panel and the coach that sits next to me, because when the team left for the World Cup, you had the bowlers that were in the squad. They were either carrying a niggle, recovering from injury, or there was a question mark. And that's one of the reasons why we took Dale along. But you had 4 of the backup bowlers that were injured as well. So you're right, part of it could be related to the workloads that we are experiencing currently. Cricket South Africa has implemented a workload monitoring system. So for all our fast bowlers, we actually monitor how much they bowl, not only in matches, but in practice sessions as well. And sometimes that, often I know in the national team, that information that will go through to the coach, and that's how they plan their sessions. But having said that, if you're having a season that starts in July and it goes through till beginning of July, literally, so you're playing 12 months of cricket, there's no time to rest, there's no time to recover, there's no time for periodization, there's no time to condition players that are coming back from injury. So that is the reality. It's the reality of the international landscape of world cricket currently. The second challenge we have is that in our first 6 games, in 4 of the games, and that's unprecedented, you ended up almost a man short. You lost Ash the first game, Lungi the second game, Rassi came off the 3rd game against the West Indies, David Miller came off against Pakistan and had to go back and bat limping. So it was a massive challenge. I mean, that's unprecedented. I've never seen that in the World Cup before. Of the 15 players that were on tour, I would say that 12 of the 15 had some form of injury or illness that was significant during the tour. There was a time as we were getting to the last few games, Otis or myself had to go do some 12-man duties. So, if we have to look at things again, and we always talk about planning and preparation, and generally the plan is always over 4 years, but I think the finer details in planning goes into the last 2 years. I mean, I know from our side, generally from a management point of view, to make things easier for Otis, things like a recce going to visit the practice venues so we know what we're going to get, the hotels, all of that was done 18 months in advance. And because we wanted to get our preferences. Scheduling a camp, where we wanted to make sure that we have middle wicket practices, practice games, all that was done also a year in advance. But then when we get to that, you reach a stage that sometimes all your plans are scuppered because unfortunately some of the players arrive 24 to 48 hours after the camp starts. But then you have to be adaptable. Whether we like it or not, the IPL is part of the international calendar. Yes, the fact that an IPL is so close to a World Cup or ICC event is a concern. And let's face facts. In our first 12 days from the warm-up game, we played 5 games. You can look at every other team, the top 4 teams that are there right now. They probably played 2 games or a game less. India had 3.5 weeks break from the time they played the final to their first game. So again, you're not offering excuses, but that's just the reality. So in our planning, those were red flagged a long time before. But sometimes things are just beyond your control and you can't manage it.
6.
Linda.
Okay. What was the question?
It's about the selection panel.
Oh,
I
okay.
think there needs to be a little bit of conversations around it, maybe new faces being brought.
Definitely. I mean, we've got India series coming up, T20, in a month or 2. So I think we need to also start preparing for the T20 World Cup. We've got a test match coming up in India, 3 matches. So definitely, there are a couple of players that we're going to have a look. I think we'll implement the same process at Division 2019, whereby you're gonna have to look at players from the franchise and the players that you had in terms of moving forward. For me, I mean, when you look at the current 15-man squad we picked, 3 of those guys played in 2014 and they won. So that winning mentality, it was part of our plans to have those guys in our setup. I mean, Makram, Kagiso, and Duwai. And at the moment, you look at our under-19, also just had a big loss against Pakistan, probably our magic team. These are things that we need to look at as we're moving forward. And these are players that we have to look at as we're moving forward in terms of the winning mentality, because if you win, you become confident as you move on. I'm not sure if I'm going to stay forward because my tab is up, so I wouldn't know. But for me, I think one thing that as a national selection panel that we've done, and I think as a country that we've moved forward, probably it's the first time that we come back to the World Cup and transformation is not used as an excuse. And for me, I think we're definitely moving forward, which means the quality of our structure and the qualities of players that we are producing are world class. So that is a forward movement in terms of saying guys who are coming to represent us, all of us, and that's how we're gonna keep moving forward, I think.
Okay, we really have to start wrapping up, right?
Linda, whether you survive or not, going forward, heading to another World Cup, should the then existing selection panel have a stance when it comes to picking a side that includes 1 or 2 or 3 players who are carrying negals, first of all, but also World Cup form, ICC events form? That's something that comes into conversation when World Cups come about, and with regards to how a certain player does at a World Cup. And we've got players who've been to World Cups 1 or 2 or 3 World Cups, and their numbers don't suggest such. Is that something that should be looked at? I don't know, there's bilateral series in between World Cups, but that should count for something. And should the selection panel, that will be then, look at a stance where they say if a bowler is not fit or has been overbowled or is carrying this or that, shouldn't go to the World Cup, or because the doesn't afford to carry 1 or 2 players who are out of form?
Yes, absolutely. But you must have a strong backup. You can't take that stance if you don't have a strong backup. If your backup as well, the guys that you've worked with for 18 months, they're also carrying a niggle, it's going to be an issue. I think part of when you look at our plans, we're discussing probably Reza Hendricks and Hashim Amla. Hashim Amla in Pakistan averaged 50, and Makram also was averaging about 35, 25 or so. And Reza Hendricks was averaging 22. So what do? Do you go with a senior player, knowing that going to the World Cup, you might get into a stage where these guys, it's their first time going to the World Cup. Like a Makram now, great player. Imagine if you had two young guys who haven't played at the international cricket and both average 22, 25, and then you have Hashim on the side is average 50. All our teams at the moment, they are carried by their senior players. So I think that for us, it's making sure that our second tier player going to the 2023 World Cup, even for now in 2020, it's vital for us to have a strong backup second tier player, especially in the SAA guys, for guys to play against the best. So our SAA guys need to play against the best. They need to compete against the best. Our under-19 guys need to compete. They need to play in the MSL, so that our under-18 guys are playing against men and we are playing the IPL. So these are things that we hopefully, as we're moving on, we need to make sure that we tighten up. But definitely, the more you have the 15 squad that you're looking at, I mean, we had over 60 players that we're looking at in this build-up to Vision 2019. So for us, I think that should continue, but the guys need to pull up their hands and perform.
So you've got an issue of one or two senior players who are carrying medals just before World Cup. A decision should be made.
Absolutely, but you must have a backup, and a young player needs to do better than a senior player. That's how it should be.
These last two, please, Stuart, and then
Corey, Tabang was quoted recently as saying that the Cricket South Africa need to re-look at the position of the director of cricket, something that first cropped up post the 2015 World Cup. Why wasn't that person appointed, and where do you see such a person fitting in terms of the organogram of South African cricket?
The position was part of the organizational design, of the recent organizational design. So the position of Director of Cricket was approved, so it's still vacant. So a decision on that will probably also be made at the upcoming board meeting on the 20th of July.
Where does that person fit? Sorry?
That person would fit as an executive on the executive of Cricket South Africa, reporting to the CEO, and in charge of national teams. Yes, so that would be you'd be there, and then all the national teams and the head of pathways will report into him or. And yeah, so that decision will be made by the board.
On the 20th.
Yeah, I suppose direction will be given on that on the 20th.
Doc, how disruptive was that whole AB Wuha? And to Mr. Zondi,
I was hoping
to you, Mr. Zondi, will you consider maybe getting him maybe as a consultant going forward for the ODI side, and also will he get to the T20 World Cup next year?
Sorry, come again.
I mean, will you consider using Imi as a consultant going forward, given his experience and all that? And also, will he get to the T20 World Cup?
I think at the moment we've been blessed to have a guy like Imi, and just probably I have been. Sorry, Corey. I've been chatting to Imi in terms of for him to come back and assist us in terms of passing it on, because he's done a very good job for us, and I think he's keen. For me, we need to have someone better for us to replace a senior guy. At the moment, I think Imi has made himself available for the T20 World Cup, and as long as he still performs the manner that he still does, and we've got guys that are coming through, and probably show better potential, because when you look at it, a player, and you look at it in totality, the fielding, the batting, what the contribution that he's going to have, we're definitely going to open it up in terms of T20. We've got about 20 matches, then to be corrected, 20 matches before the T20 World Cup. So we need to get to a stage whereby those 20 matches, hopefully, like probably our plan to have our final squad for this World Cup to be finalized by Australia, so that we give these guys 2 series. So when you look at the 20 matches, I think the plan that we have to implement is that by the 10th 10 games, or probably 10, the team that's going to the World Cup should be finalized, and those guys should break through as a team. So that is a plan. But for Imi's contribution, I think to stay on for now, I think it should be a good move, and he's very keen as well.
Doc, okay, just let me answer the question. I mean, Abi's been a great servant for Cricket South Africa, and we don't replace a player like that overnight. But having said that, when he retired, we all respected his decision, especially after we had counseled and chatted to him. From a team space, I can say with conviction that we had moved on. The team had been moved on since he retired, and even while this was playing out in the media space, it didn't affect us at all.
Last time, please, Krista.
Doc, just sort of going back to that scheduling of the World Cup, it almost seems from the outside in a way, but apparent that there was almost a bit of preferential treatment for India to give them the most time to recover after the IPL. Is that the feeling that, and Otis, maybe you can even say what you think about it. So, do you think that there's sort of justification in saying that India was almost like given a bit of a head start in the tournament with that?
So, just to put things into perspective, the initial draft of the World Cup fixtures came out 18 months ago. When that draft came out, our first game was against England, our second game was against India. That Bangladesh fixture